The branch snapped beneath Elara's foot, and she stumbled forward into the mud. Rain hammered down through the canopy of whisperwood forest, soaking through her cloak and chilling her to the bone. Behind her, somewhere in the darkness, voices echoed. They were still searching for her. Find the witch. She can't have gone far. Elara's hands trembled as she pressed them against a massive oak trunk, feeling the rough bark scrape her palms. Her fingertips sparked with golden light, an involuntary response to fear, and she quickly clenched her fists until her nails bit into her skin. The light died. It had to die. That light was why they'd cast her out of Silver Peak Pack, why she was running through a storm-drenched forest with nothing but the clothes on her back and a small leather satchel. The voices faded into the distance, swallowed by thunder. Elara forced herself to breathe, to move. One foot in front of the other. Keep going. Find shelter. Survive. She didn't know how long she walked before she saw it, a small cottage, half hidden by overgrown vines and leaning slightly to one side as if the forest itself was trying to reclaim it. The windows were dark, the door hanging crooked on its hinges. Abandoned. Perfect. Elara pushed inside, and the smell of mildew and rotting would hit her immediately. But it was dry, and it had walls, and right now that was more than she'd dared hope for. She closed the door behind her, wedging it shut with a rusted iron bar she found on the floor. In the corner sat a broken chair and what might have once been a table. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, its chimney likely clogged with decades of bird nests. This would be home now. This would be the prison of her own making. Elara sank against the wall, pulling her knees to her chest. Her hands still tingled with suppressed magic, that cursed light that had marked her as different, as dangerous, from the moment it first manifested when she was 12. The elders had called it uncontrolled. Wild. A threat to the pack's stability. They'd tolerated her for years, watching her with suspicious eyes, until 3 months ago, when she'd accidentally healed a child who'd fallen from a tree. The boy's mother had screamed, called her a demon, said the light had burned her son's skin even as it mended his broken bones. It hadn't. Elara knew it hadn't. But fear didn't care about truth. Never again, she whispered to the empty cottage, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. I'll never use it again. I'll be normal. I'll be safe. The vow felt like chains wrapping around her chest, heavy and suffocating, but necessary. She'd live here in isolation, hunt for her food, speak to no one, touch no one, heal no one. The light would fade eventually. It had to. Elara must have fallen asleep against the wall because when her eyes opened, pale morning light was filtering through the gaps in the wooden shutters. Her neck ached, and her clothes were still damp, but she was alive. She pushed herself up, wincing at the stiffness in her legs, and began to explore her new home more thoroughly. The cottage was smaller than she'd thought, just one main room with a tiny alcove that might have once held a bed. The floorboards creaked under her weight, and in several places she could see straight through to the dirt below. But the roof seemed mostly intact, and the fireplace would work once she cleaned it out. She could make this work. She had to make this work. As Elara knelt to examine a crack in the floor near the fireplace, she heard it. A sound so faint she almost missed it beneath the morning birdsong filtering through the walls. A whimper. Soft, pained, barely more than a breath. She froze, listening. There it was again, coming from the alcove where the bed frame still stood, its mattress long since rotted away. Elara approached slowly, her heart beginning to race. The sound was coming from underneath the bed frame. She lowered herself to her hands and knees, peering into the shadows. 2 golden eyes stared back at her, glazed with fever and pain. Oh no, Elara breathed, her chest tightening. No, no, no. It was a werewolf pup, no more than a few months old, its dark fur matted with blood and dirt. The pup's breathing was shallow and labored, each exhale a tiny rattle in its chest. One of its back legs lay at an unnatural angle, clearly broken, and a deep gash across its shoulder oozed fresh blood. The pup whimpered again, trying to crawl deeper under the bed frame, away from her. It was dying. Even without her healing sense, Elara could see that. Hours, maybe. Certainly not days. "It's okay," she whispered, holding out her hand slowly. "I won't hurt you." The pup's eyes flickered, and something in Elara's chest pulled tight. She'd seen that look before in injured animals, that terrible awareness that death was coming and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The resignation. The fear. Her hands began to glow before she could stop them, golden light seeping through her skin like sunrise through clouds. Elara yanked her hands back, pressing them against her stomach. "No," she said firmly, to herself as much as to the pup. "I can't. I promised. I can't." The pup's breathing hitched, and its eyes began to close. Elara's throat constricted. This was just an animal. A wolf cub, probably separated from its pack during a hunt or a territorial dispute. It had nothing to do with her. She didn't owe it anything. She couldn't break her vow on her very first night in exile. What would that say about her control, her discipline, her ability to keep herself and others safe? But those eyes. Those pleading, innocent eyes. Damn it, Elara choked out, tears burning her vision. She reached under the bed frame, and this time the pup didn't pull away. It didn't have the strength. Damn it all. She pulled the pup out gently, cradling its small body against her chest. It was heavier than she expected, solid muscle beneath the matted fur, but so fragile in this moment. The pup's heartbeat was erratic against her palm, skipping beats, struggling. Elara's hand shook as she laid the pup on the floor, positioning it carefully so the broken leg wasn't bearing any weight. The gash on its shoulder was deep, probably from a larger predator. A bear, maybe, or another wolf defending territory. It didn't matter. What mattered was that without help, this pup would be dead before sunset. "Forgive me," she whispered, not sure if she was asking forgiveness from the pack that exiled her, from herself, or from some higher power she'd stopped believing in years ago. She placed both hands on the pup's chest and let go. The light exploded from her palms like a dam breaking, golden and warm and achingly familiar. It poured into the pup's small body, seeking out every injury, every broken piece, every dying cell. Elara gasped as the connection formed, that strange, magical bond that happened sometimes when she healed, a tether between her life force and the pup's. She could feel its pain now, sharp and all-consuming, but also its desperate will to survive, to keep fighting even when its body was failing. The broken leg began to knit itself back together, bone fragments realigning with soft clicks that made Elara's stomach turn. The gash on the shoulder closed from the inside out, muscle and tissue regenerating, skin sealing over fresh pink flesh. The pup's breathing deepened, steadied, its heartbeat finding a strong, regular rhythm. And through it all, Elara felt something she'd never experienced before in all her years of healing. The bond didn't fade when the healing finished. It stayed, glowing softly in her chest like a second heartbeat, tying her to this creature in a way she couldn't explain and didn't understand. The light finally dimmed, and Elara slumped forward, exhausted. Healing always took energy, but this had drained her more than usual. The pup lay still for a long moment, and panic flared in Elara's chest. Had she been too late? Had she? The pup's eyes opened, clear and bright and fully aware. It looked at her, and Elara could have sworn she saw recognition there, gratitude, something almost human in its gaze. Then it yawned, showing tiny, sharp teeth, and tried to stand on wobbly legs. "Easy," Elara said, her voice thick with emotion she couldn't name. "You're still weak. Just rest." The pup ignored her, stumbling forward until it could press its small head against her hand. It made a sound, not quite a whimper but something softer, more content. Elara felt tears spill down her cheeks as she stroked the pup's fur, now clean of blood and matted dirt thanks to her magic. "What am I going to do with you?" she asked, but she was already pulling the pup into her lap, already accepting that she couldn't turn it away now. The bond hummed between them, warm and constant. The pup looked up at her and made that soft sound again. In the morning light, its fur shone like polished silver. "Silver," Elara murmured. "I'll call you Silver." The days that followed fell into a gentle rhythm. Elara cleaned the cottage as best she could, patched holes in the walls with mud and moss, and managed to get a small fire going in the fireplace after clearing out 3 seasons' worth of debris. Silver followed her everywhere, growing stronger by the hour, the magical bond between them allowing Elara to sense when the pup was hungry, tired, or wanted to play. She'd broken her vow. She'd used her magic. And somehow, the world hadn't ended. On the 3rd morning, Elara woke to Silver curled against her side, the pup's breathing deep and peaceful. She stroked its fur absently, staring at the ceiling and trying not to think about what came next. Someone would come looking for Silver eventually. Werewolf pups didn't just appear in abandoned cottages. It had a family somewhere, a pack that was probably searching. What would she tell them? How would she explain? The sound of hoofbeats answered her question sooner than she'd expected. Elara shot upright, and Silver's head lifted immediately, ears perked and alert. The bond thrummed with the pup's sudden anxiety, feeding into her own. She moved to the window, peering through the cracked shutters. 3 riders approached through the forest, their horses picking careful paths between the trees. They wore dark cloaks marked with silver threading, and even from a distance, Elara could see the quality of their clothing, the way they sat their horses with military precision. These weren't simple hunters. These were nobility, or close to it. The lead rider raised his hand, and the group stopped just outside the cottage. He dismounted in one smooth motion, his cloak falling back to reveal a man in his early 30s with sharp features and dark hair pulled back in a simple tie. His eyes, Elara noticed with a jolt, were the same golden shade as Silver's. He knocked on the door, 3 firm raps that echoed through the small cottage like thunder. Elara's hands began to glow instinctively, and she shoved them behind her back. Silver pressed against her legs, looking up at her with those 2 intelligent eyes. The bond pulsed between them, and she could feel the pup's fear, its desire to hide, but also its recognition of the scent beyond the door. Family. The man outside was family. The knock came again. "I know you're in there," the man called, his voice deep but not unkind. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm looking for a pup that went missing 3 days ago. His mother is frantic with worry." Elara's throat tightened. 3 days. The same amount of time she'd been here. Silver must have wandered into the cottage shortly before she arrived, already injured, already dying. She took a breath and opened the door. The man stood there, tall and imposing, but his expression softened the moment he saw Silver pressed against her legs. Relief flooded his features, so genuine and powerful that Elara felt some of her fear ease. "Thank the ancestors," he breathed, then his eyes moved to Elara. "You found him." "He found me," Elara corrected quietly. "He was under the bed, injured. I couldn't just." She trailed off, waiting for the accusations, the anger, the fear. But the man simply studied her, his gaze moving from her face to her hands, which she realized were still faintly glowing. She quickly clenched her fists, and the light died. "You healed him," the man said. It wasn't a question. Elara lifted her chin, preparing for the worst. "Yes. My sister said he was dying. She tracked his scent to this cottage but lost the trail in the storm. We thought." He paused, his jaw tightening. "We thought we'd find a body." Silver whined softly and took a tentative step toward the man. The bond in Elara's chest pulled, torn between the pup's desire to go to its family and its reluctance to leave her. The man knelt, and Silver bounded forward the last few steps, tail wagging frantically. He scooped the pup up, holding it close, and Elara saw his shoulders shake with what might have been relief or suppressed tears. When he looked up at her again, his eyes were wet. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice rough. "My sister, Lyanna, has been beside herself. This is her firstborn." When he disappeared during the hunt. He shook his head. "The injury you healed, it should have killed him within hours." "It almost did," Elara admitted, wrapping her arms around herself. The bond still pulsed in her chest, and she could feel Silver's happiness at being reunited with his uncle, but also the pup's confusion, its desire to come back to her. I found him just in time. The man stood, still holding Silver, and studied her more carefully. You're not from the local packs. Your accent is northern. Silver Peak, if I'm not mistaken. Elara's jaw tightened. I was. Not anymore. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something that looked like sympathy. The stories reached even here. A healer with light magic, exiled for being too powerful, too dangerous. He paused. My name is Kale Stormwrath, sovereign of the Moonreach realm. And I think those who exiled you were fools. Elara stared at him, unable to process what she'd just heard. The sovereign. She'd just healed the nephew of the most powerful werewolf leader in the Southern Territories, and he was calling her exiles fools instead of demanding she leave his lands immediately. I don't understand, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale shifted Silver in his arms, the pup settling contentedly against his chest but still watching Elara with those bright eyes. You broke your vow to save a life. A child's life. I would call that an improvement over vows that let children die to preserve pride. The words hit Elara like a physical blow. She'd spent 3 days drowning in guilt over breaking her promise, convinced she'd proven everyone right about her lack of control. But here was this man, this leader, reframing her choice as something honorable instead of shameful. The bond, Kale continued, his gaze sharpening. I can see it. The way he keeps looking at you, the way you knew he was confused just now. That's not normal healing magic, is it? Elara shook her head slowly. I don't know what it is. It's never happened before, not like this. Usually the connection fades after the healing is done, but with Silver. She touched her chest where the bond glowed warm and constant. It stayed. Kale was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Then he made a decision that would change everything. Come with us. To Stormhold Citadel. My sister will want to thank you herself, and Silver clearly isn't ready to leave you yet. The bond might need time to stabilize. I can't, Elara said immediately, fear spiking through her. I came here to be alone, to make sure I never hurt anyone with my magic again. Going to a citadel full of people, it's safe, Kale interrupted firmly. It's safe because I say it is. I am the sovereign, and no one will threaten you under my protection. His expression softened slightly. And you won't be alone. You'll have Silver, and Lyanna will be in your debt. That's worth more than you might think in court politics. Silver chose that moment to squirm in Kale's arms, reaching toward Elara with tiny paws. The bond tugged insistently, and Elara felt the pup's distress at the distance between them growing stronger. See? Kale said gently. Even he knows you should come. Whatever this bond is, it needs both of you. Separating now could harm him, and I know you don't want that. Elara closed her eyes, feeling trapped by her own compassion. He was right. She could feel Silver's growing agitation through the bond, could sense that being apart was causing the pup genuine distress. And if staying apart could hurt him after she'd worked so hard to save him, how could she walk away? Just for a few days, she said finally, opening her eyes. Until the bond stabilizes and he doesn't need me anymore. Kale's slight smile suggested he knew it wouldn't be that simple, but he nodded. Just for a few days. Gather what you need. We'll wait. The journey to Stormhold Citadel took most of the day. Elara rode behind one of Kale's guards on a massive gray mare, while Silver sat in a basket attached to Kale's saddle, perfectly content. The forest gradually gave way to rolling hills and then to cultivated farmland, and with each mile, Elara's anxiety grew. Kale seemed to sense her nervousness because he fell back to ride beside her, leaving his other guard to take the lead. Tell me about Silver Peak, he said conversationally. I've heard it's beautiful in winter. Elara glanced at him, surprised by the casual tone. It is. The mountains turn white, and the pack runs under the full moon across fields of snow that glow like they're lit from within. She paused, old pain tightening her chest. I used to love those runs. Used to? They stopped letting me join after my magic manifested. Said I was too unpredictable, that I might lose control during the transformation and hurt someone. Elara's hands tightened on the saddle. I never did, in all the years I had my magic. But they were so afraid of what I might do that they forgot to see what I actually was doing. Which was? Kale prompted. Healing. Every person who came to me with injuries or sickness, I healed them all. For free. Because it was the right thing to do. Her voice cracked slightly. But one mistake, one child whose mother didn't understand that healing light doesn't burn, and suddenly I was too dangerous to exist among them. Kale was quiet for a moment. Their loss is my gain, then. We have healers in Moonreach, but none with your strength. That bond you formed with Silver, I've only read about such things in very old texts. It suggests your power is far greater than even you realize. That's supposed to comfort me? Elara asked, a hint of bitter humor in her voice. It's supposed to remind you that power isn't inherently dangerous. Fear of power, unwillingness to understand it, that's what causes harm. Kale gestured ahead to where the citadel was beginning to appear on the horizon, its stone towers rising against the sky. In Moonreach, we believe in learning to work with magic, not cowering from it. Stormhold Citadel was massive, far larger than Elara had imagined. High walls surrounded a complex of buildings, the central keep rising 6 stories and crowned with banners that snapped in the wind. Guards stood at attention as Kale's party approached, and the gates swung open without a word being spoken. Inside, the courtyard bustled with activity. Servants hurried about their tasks, guards trained in a corner, and nobles in fine clothing stood in clusters discussing matters Elara couldn't hear. Every eye turned to their party as they entered, and Elara felt her skin crawl with the weight of their stares. Then a woman's cry cut through the noise. Silver. A figure in a deep blue dress rushed forward, her dark hair streaming behind her. She was beautiful, with the same golden eyes as Kale and Silver, and her face was streaked with tears. Lyanna, Elara realized. Silver's mother. Kale dismounted and lifted the basket, and Lyanna snatched her son into her arms, sobbing openly as she pressed her face into his fur. Silver squirmed and yipped, clearly happy but also sending waves of discomfort through the bond to Elara. He wanted his mother, but he also wanted Elara. The conflicting desires made Elara's chest ache. How? Lyanna gasped, looking up at her brother. The tracker said he was dying. The amount of blood we found, the broken bones. She healed him, Kale said simply, gesturing to Elara as she dismounted awkwardly. Lyanna's gaze snapped to Elara, and for a heart-stopping moment, Elara saw suspicion flash across her features. Then Silver whined and reached toward Elara, and Lyanna's expression transformed into something like wonder. You saved my son, she whispered. I couldn't let him die, Elara said, feeling overwhelmed and out of place in this grand courtyard with all these people watching. I found him injured and I had to try. Lyanna crossed the distance between them in 3 quick strides and pulled Elara into a fierce embrace, still holding Silver with one arm. Thank you, she choked out. Thank you, thank you. I thought I'd lost him. I thought, her voice broke entirely. Elara stood frozen, and used to such open gratitude, such physical affection from a stranger. Slowly, she raised her arms and returned the embrace, feeling some of the tension in her shoulders ease. When Lyanna pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. You'll stay with us, of course. For as long as you like. Anything you need, anything at all, you only have to ask. I told her a few days ago, Kale interjected. Until the bond stabilizes. Bond? Lyanna's eyes widened, and she looked between Elara and Silver with new understanding. A healer's bond? But those are so rare, I've never actually seen, she stopped, studying Elara more carefully. We should discuss this inside, Kale said, his tone brooking no argument. The council will want to hear about this, and we should control the narrative before rumors start spreading. Elara's stomach dropped. The council? Standard procedure when powerful magic users enter Moonreach, Kale explained, though his expression was apologetic. Don't worry. I'll handle them. The council chamber was everything Elara had feared. A long stone room with high ceilings and narrow windows that let in cold light. 12 council members sat in elevated seats arranged in a semicircle, looking down at where Elara stood in the center of the floor. Cale sat in the highest seat, his face impassive and regal. Lyanna stood beside Elara, holding Silver, a silent show of support. Lord Draven, a severe man with silver hair and cold eyes, spoke first. We are told you possess light magic, the kind that caused such trouble in Silver Peak. That you've formed an unprecedented bond with the Sovereign's nephew. These are concerning claims. Elara lifted her chin. I healed a dying child. If that's concerning to you, then perhaps you should examine your priorities. Several council members gasped at her boldness. Draven's eyes narrowed dangerously. You were exiled for inability to control your power, another council member, a woman in dark robes, added. How can we trust you won't cause similar problems here? Because I've been using my power for 15 years without incident, Elara shot back, her fear transforming into anger. One frightened mother who didn't understand what she was seeing doesn't erase a lifetime of healing. I've saved dozens of lives. How many have you saved, counselor? That's enough, Cale said quietly, but his voice carried absolute authority. The room fell silent. He leaned forward in his seat, his gaze moving across each council member. I want to be very clear about something. Elara saved my nephew's life when he would have died otherwise. She asked for nothing in return. She wanted nothing but to be left alone. And yet here we are, interrogating her like a criminal for the crime of compassion. My lord, Draven began, but Cale raised his hand. I'm not finished. You speak of control and danger, but what I see is a council that would rather bury power than learn to work with it. A council that will always choose fear over growth, isolation over integration. Is that really who we want to be? The silence stretched. Then Lyanna stepped forward, shifting Silver in her arms so the council could see him clearly. 3 days ago, I tracked my son's blood through the forest, knowing in my heart he was already dead, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. I found the cottage where he'd taken shelter, and I smelled death. But when I couldn't find him, I had to accept that perhaps predators had already taken his body. That I would never see my son again. She looked at Elara, and there was such gratitude in her expression that Elara felt tears prick her eyes. Then my brother brought him home, healthy and whole, because this woman refused to let a child die even though it meant breaking the vow that kept her safe. Even though it meant risking everything. Lyanna's voice hardened. If this council condemns her for that, then this council stands for nothing I recognize as honorable. Silver chose that moment to squirm free from his mother's arms, dropping to the floor and running straight to Elara. He pressed against her legs, looking up at her with complete trust, and the bond flared warm and golden in her chest. Even the council members could see the shimmer of magic that connected them. Remarkable, breathed one of the older council members, a man with kind eyes. I've only read about such bonds in historical texts. The magic recognizes her as essential to his survival. Which means separating them could harm him, Cale added pointedly. So unless this council wants to be responsible for hurting a child, I suggest we accept reality. Elara stays, under my personal protection, and we treat her with the respect her abilities and her character deserve. Draven looked like he'd swallowed something bitter, but even he couldn't argue against the evidence of the bond or the Sovereign's direct command. And if her power does become unstable? Then we'll deal with it, Cale said firmly. But we'll deal with it by helping her, training her, supporting her. Not by casting her out and pretending the problem doesn't exist. That's what Silver Peak did, and look how well that worked for them. They lost a powerful healer because they were too afraid to see her value. The vote, when it came, was not unanimous. But it was enough. Elara could stay. The days that followed blurred together. Elara was given chambers in the citadel, beautiful rooms with soft beds and windows that overlooked the gardens. Silver stayed with her most nights, though he visited his mother regularly. The bond between them gradually settled into something comfortable, a constant warm presence that no longer pulled or ached. But it was her growing connection with Cale that surprised Elara most. He sought her out often, walking with her in the gardens, asking about her healing methods, sharing stories of Munrich's history. He never pushed, never demanded, just offered quiet companionship that slowly eroded her defenses. One evening, 2 months after her arrival, Cale found her on the terrace overlooking the realm. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that reminded Elara of her healing light. "You're thinking about leaving," Cale said quietly, coming to stand beside her. Elara didn't deny it. "The bond is stable. Silver doesn't need me anymore. I've fulfilled my obligation." "Is that all this has been to you? An obligation?" She turned to look at him, and the intensity in his golden eyes made her breath catch. "Cale, I need to tell you something," he interrupted, his voice rough with emotion. "And I need you to just listen, because if I don't say this now, I might lose my courage." Elara nodded, not trusting her voice. "Somewhere between finding you in that forest cottage and watching you hold my nephew as if the world could not touch him while he slept, I fell in love with you." The words tumbled out, honest and raw. "I love your strength, your compassion, the way you chose healing over safety. I love how you've made Silver laugh, how you've won over half my court despite their initial fear. I love who you are, Elara, and I don't want you to leave." Elara's eyes burned with tears. "I don't know how to be anything but afraid of what I am." "Then let me be brave enough for both of us until you remember," Cale said, reaching for her hand. His fingers were warm against hers. "Stay. Not because of Silver, not because of obligation. Stay because you want to. Because maybe, somewhere in these past 2 months, you've started to feel something for me too." Had she? Elara examined her heart and found the answer waiting. Yes. Despite her fear, despite her careful walls, she'd fallen for this man who defended her in council chambers and walked with her in gardens and looked at her like she was something precious instead of dangerous. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "So am I," Cale said with a slight smile. "Love is terrifying. But it's also worth it." Elara squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth of the bond with Silver in her chest and this new, different warmth blooming beside it. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." Cale's smile transformed his entire face. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles, and Elara felt something inside her finally settle. Finally come home. Silver found them there an hour later, curled up together watching the stars emerge. The pup climbed into Elara's lap with the confidence of belonging, and she stroked his silver fur while Cale's arm remained steady around her shoulders. She'd been exiled for her light, cast out for being too dangerous, too powerful, too different. But here in Moonreach, in Stormhold Citadel, she'd found something she never expected. Acceptance. Purpose. Love. And as Silver dozed in her lap and Cale held her close, Elara finally understood what her light had been trying to tell her all along. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't something to hide or fear or suppress. It was a gift, meant to be shared, meant to heal not just bodies but broken places in the world. Her light had led her to Silver. Silver had led her to Cale. And Cale had given her the courage to be herself, finally. "Thank you," she whispered, not sure if she was talking to Silver, to Cale, or to the magic itself. Cale pressed a kiss to her temple. "For what?" "For seeing me. Not the exile, not the dangerous magic user. Just me. Always," he promised. "I'll always see you." And in that moment, under a sky full of stars, Elara believed him. If you've enjoyed this story of healing, hope, and finding where you truly belong, please subscribe to our channel for more magical tales. Leave a comment below telling us what touched your heart most about Elara's journey, and don't forget to like this video to help others discover this story. Remember, sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't the power we possess, but the fear that keeps us from sharing our light with the world. Until next time, keep shining.